Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, brokered by eXp Realty, proudly serving Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties. Call 407-790-9957 or visit WeSellOrlando.net.
Now, my question, I'm writing that down. 347, sneeze. Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here on this. It's been the Lane train has officially been derailed, and now we're on a midnight plane to Pittsburgh, I guess. No, we're not going to Pittsburgh. They're coming down here. But we got lots to talk about this week off of UCF's 3-0 start and a win over in-state FAU. And, you guys watched that game as we got started here. Like, what do we get? Like, upset Lane? Do we get contemplative Lane? Like, what did we get from that?
We apparently got Lane, who was still fully committed to the quote he posted in his weight room.
Oh man! I was going to say, yeah, that was my next question. Like, did you get misquoted again this week, Brian Murphy, by an opposing head coach?
I did not, but apparently Lane Kiffin, if he heard anybody say that's not a quote, it didn't matter to him, because when asked about Devin Singletary after the game, or actually during this week, he said he made a lot of guys miss, including Novell, as if he was kind of poking Novell Clark for things he didn't say. Yeah. But again, it is what it is. Coach is going to coach.
Coach is going to coach. We are at Black and Gold Banneret, the UCF, your home for UCF on the SB Nation network. blackandgoldbanneret.com is where you want to go. You can follow us all at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret and UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Individually, I am at Jeff_Sharon. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo. Brian is at Spokes_Murphy. And you can subscribe to this podcast if you don't already on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Let's dive right in, boys. Football just continues to just roll along here. 16 wins in a row, 3-0, 56-36 win over FAU. In a game that, let's be honest, there was a little bit of a roller coaster in the first half with UCF jumping out 14-0. FAU actually took a lead in the second quarter of this game, 17-14. But then UCF finally said, what are we doing? Let's make some adjustments and take care of business. And that's exactly what they did. So 56-36 was the final. This was Mackenzie Milton's best game of the season, arguably the best game of his career, actually. When you look at the sheer numbers, he finished 21 of 32 for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. He was sacked only once, no interceptions. And on top of that, he was UCF's leading rusher, 13 carries, 81 yards, 3 more touchdowns, including a really spectacular one that was kind of the touchdown that more or less ended the game. On defense, UCF gave up a fair number of yards, 447 to FAU, but a lot of that was more or less, you knew the FAU was going to get some yards and some points. They came into that game having won, what was it, 12 of their last 13, and they're a pretty good football team, but UCF pretty much established themselves as clearly the better team in the second half. Now, my question for you guys is, like, Luke Saris brought this up, and he wrote a column on blackandgoldbanneret.com, and he basically took the words right out of my mouth. I've never seen so many UCF fans complaining after a blowout win over a team where we won our 16th consecutive game. And I get that there are holes. I'm not saying UCF played a perfect game against FAU. They clearly did not. But FAU's a good football team. And clearly UCF was better than them. We established that, obviously. What is this coming from? Why is it that the fan base right now, or at least a vocal chunk of it, I don't know if it's a majority or not, but a vocal chunk of it looks at this game and is like, not good enough?
Well, Eric, you're so much better at going into this than me. Your takes on this are so much hotter than mine. I just want to,
and also really all the fans hate Eric because he's not afraid to put them in their place.
Tell the truth.
That's why I'm ceding the entire balance of my time to the congressman from the state of Florida.
To the congressman from Miami.
Yeah, because I just want to hear you roll with this.
Well,
get your popcorn out. Here we go.
I think part of the frustration is they saw the FAU game opening weekend get absolutely destroyed, and I mean destroyed, by Oklahoma. Like, that game was over in 2 seconds. And I think UCF fans' perspective is like, no, he should be doing the same thing. And now, not only are you not doing that, you're actually getting outplayed. FAU outplayed them in the second quarter. Singletary was running all over them. And I think that's where the frustration is, because the whole argument, right, that UCF has tried to make in the fan base is we're as good as anybody in the country. It's a bias. Everybody's biased. Well, here is in a situation where I think psychologically you're comparing to yourself to a team like Oklahoma, and you lose. You lose the argument. They clearly were not as good as impressive against FAU at home as Oklahoma was. And I think that's where part of that is coming. I think what has happened here over the last year is that UCF fans have gotten now agitated. They are agitated at the media, and they are agitated at any swipe of biasness or slap in the face or criticism. And so when the team doesn't perform to what they believe is the highest level that they can back up their claims, they take it out on the team. And I think that's what happened. I think they wanted to destroy FAU like Oklahoma did and failed to do so.
Okay, but couldn't we say that against Oklahoma, FAU laid an egg, and against us, they gave it their best shot and still didn't hold a candle to UCF? Couldn't I make that argument?
I mean, you could, but I think the other problem is you say FAU is a good team. I'm not so sure. They don't have a passing game, and I think that's the other frustrating. There's nothing more frustrating than when you struggle against a one-dimensional team. And I think fans can't deal with that. They just don't. And FAU doesn't have a passing game. I think if FAU had Driscoll at quarterback like they did last year, I actually think that would have been a 4-quarter game. But they don't have that guy. Driscoll quit. He retired. And so I think Lane's struggling to find a quarterback. He's probably going to dial up Jalen Hurts after this year when he goes there, probably. That's But Singletary, you know what the FAU team reminded me of a lot? It reminded me of the 07 UCF team with Singletary playing the Kevin Smith role. And UCF's passing in with Kyle, with all due respect, who's a friend, Kyle Israel, a limited passing game.
Funny you should mention that, given that Kevin Smith is FAU's running backs coach.
That's why I did that. See, that's how this works. And we did try, by the way, for the record, we did try to get Kevin Smith on. FAU actually told us Lane Kiffin has the same policy as Nick Saban, which is he doesn't let assistants talk to the media, as far as outside media anyway.
Translation, Lane Kiffin has a stupid policy regarding assistant coaches. Anyway.
That's an awful policy, but yeah, regardless.
Stupid friggin' policy. What are they going to do? Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's where I think the fans' frustration is now. And the problem is UCF is all they're going to hear about for the rest of the year from national pundits and college football writers is how weak their schedule is. So now it's not only good enough to just win, you have to win big to justify your standing as, hey, we're one of the best teams in the country, whether you agree with it or not. I think that's where all that kind of frustration has come from. And the reality is, I don't think this is who this defense is.
Right.
I think their defensive line is suspect. when you lose guys like Gerard and Pittman, I'm not surprised by that. I kind of compare college football with the reduced scholarships compared to the NFL and the salary cap. You're not going to be strong at every position. You just hope that your weak spot is not going to kill you enough. And I think if you want to quote unquote say UCF's Achilles heel is the defensive line right now, you're just hope it's still not the worst, but you're hoping it doesn't kill you a couple times a year.
You know, I made the point that this defense is classic bend but don't break, and we looked at the numbers for this. So this is what I told Chris Carter on Twitter, also Black and Gold Banneret, was UCF right now is 87th in FBS in total defense. They're giving up 397 yards a game, but they're 5th in turnover margin, +2 a game, 26th in scoring defense, allowing 17.7 points per game, and they're on the field the 5th most in terms of time of possession. UCF defense is out there the 5th most amount of time. This is classic bend but don't break. And so far, under Randy Shannon, this has been working. This is exactly what we thought this team would be, and it's worked so far. So now I understand that there are concerns about, what happens when we get into conference play, what happens if someone, gets a hold of the offense, but it's not like they expected the defense to be world beaters here. I mean, they're
but here's the problem: fans don't like that word "bend" or don't break, because that sounds like you're
working.
Well, you say it's working, but it's working against not really great competition.
See, that's where I disagree. I think FAU is a better team than people think. I know you don't.
But other than that, though, those numbers are skewed by a shutout versus an FCS team and a blowout versus a god awful UConn team
on the road in the conference.
Team, correct.
Hey, it's an awful team, Jeff. It's an awful team.
They barely beat an FCS team. I mean, it's not a very. That's the problem. Here's the problem. This is the problem that we're going to have, and we're going to have this discussion every week. And fans don't like to hear it, but it's reality. The schedule is dog poo-poo. It's garbage. It's bad. It's not UCF's fault. It's bad breaks. You have the team you have teams that are like UConn, which Murph's point. Here's a stat for you about UConn. You ready for this?
Okay.
I saw this today, and I couldn't believe it. UConn this year, defensively, has given up an average of 54 points a game this year. All right?
Yeah.
The women's basketball team last season gave up an average of 53.
For some reason, I think I've seen that stat before with regard to UConn.
Right.
They're giving up 664 yards of offense, which is 100 more yards than any other team in the FBS.
Yep. Now, South Carolina State is right now one of the worst FCS teams right now. I think they only have, one win, and their offense is terrible. FAU has 2 again, they got destroyed by Oklahoma, barely got by Air Force. Now, I agree with you. I think they'll win Conference USA. Now, maybe that's because USA anything, although North Texas might really push them. I mean, North Texas
is good, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the problem. I think we don't know. And I think fans are concerned okay, you might get away with that with an FAU, but do you get away with that with like a Memphis or a South Florida down the road? I mean, those are the things that kind of worry you. But the reality is, because the schedule is so favorable, they're going to be heavy favorites in just about every game moving forward, that if they struggle, fans are going to be frustrated because they're trying to make this argument. It's us against the national media. Screw you. You're biased. You don't know what you're talking about. But if the team struggles, that kind of hurts their claim a little bit. So I think fans always want their defenses to dominate. They don't like to hear the word bend but don't break, because it kind of comes off as an excuse, basically. Oh, they're not that good, but they make plays when they have to, type of thing. Fans don't want that. They want to they want to dominate.
Funny you mentioned that. Perfect segue. Because UCF is playing Pitt this week. Now here's where we get to put this to the test. Pitt comes in 2-2, ACC team. I don't care what anybody says. They actually are in the ACC.
Some would argue they should still be in the Big East, but that's a whole other.
Now I will grant you they're 2-2. Now their 2 wins were at home against Albany in their opener, and against Georgia Tech at home as well by 5. Their losses, 51-6 at home against number 13 Penn State, and last week 38-35 to North Carolina, a team that UCF was scheduled to play but did not because of the hurricane. By the way, that was in Chapel Hill. It was a tight game. North Carolina, was able to basically hold Pitt at the end of the game. But okay, here we go. UCF is at home for this game, favored by 13.5 according to OddsShark. The over.
That's what I have. That's what I'm going to use on ELO lines coming out right now this week.
Right. Over
Solid
under
plug.
solid. Over under is 65 for this game.
So it's dropped a little bit. That's interesting.
That over under is going to get crushed.
Okay, 72% according to OddsShark have taken the over on that. So my question is, let's say that by the way, the spread opened at 15.5. It's been bet down to 13.5. Let's say UCF does take care of business. Do we think it will matter?
No, it will not. It will not matter because you just mentioned it. Here's the thing. People are going to use some UCF people, and even other people are going to compare how they do against Pitt compared to how Pitt did against Penn State. In other words, if UCF doesn't destroy Pitt like Penn State did, then it's going to be the same kind of – I think you're going to have the same exact reaction that you've had post-FAU. That's what it is. UCF – now we're in this battle where we're trying to make, which I think is stupid. Like I've always thought the comparison of scores is stupid. But then again, we are the same people that made the whole argument about, well, we beat Auburn, who beat Alabama, who beat Georgia. So we're playing these stupid games. That's what we do in college football because college football fans are the most immature, idiotic people.
I knew it was coming. I was waiting for that one. Let's write that one down.
Let me know when you need a mature college football fan. I mean, it just is what it is. But no, I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think people look at Pitt. This is how much the game's on ESPNU. It's not on ESPN. It's not on ESPN2. It's on ESPNU. And unfortunately, this is not a Dan Marino-led Pittsburgh team. It's not an Alex Van Pelt Pittsburgh
that would be impressive.
It would be fun, wouldn't it? So, no, I don't think UCF's going to get any, from a standpoint of, whoa, wow, this team is unbelievable. If Pitt would have played Penn State strong, tougher, I think that would have helped. Now, the case I would make if I'm a UCF perspective is, hey, look, this is a team that beat Miami last year at the end of the regular season, and it's an ACC team. I think it's important for UCF. Interesting stat, UCF has not beaten a, quote, Power 5 team at home, non-conference game since 2011. Now, there's an asterisk on that because technically UCF beat Rutgers in 2013.
Yeah, but they were a conference opponent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, no, look, this is a cool deal. And again, the reason I talk about the schedule, I want to, again, preface this because the other thing college football fans like to do is only half listen to conversations. So they only listen to half statements. As Murph found out with Lane Kiffin, which that's what happened. They kind of make up their own narrative based on it, even if it's fiction.
To be fair, Lane's not a fan, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, apparently he might be listening. Who knows? So
actually,
I just want to make that clear. I want to say when I say when I'm trashing the schedule, I'm not blaming UCF for it. There's going to be people who's like, well, Eric Relo's blaming UCF. No, I'm not doing that at all. In fact, I thought UCF did a good job. If we were having this conversation 5 years ago, hey, they scheduled North Carolina and they scheduled Pitt, we would say, dang, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah. Two ACC teams, Murderers Row. Look out. That's going to be a tough thing to do,
Two teams that were ACC title contenders. I mean, North Carolina was playing for the ACC title a couple years ago. Pitt's got good tradition. Unfortunately, they've both fallen on tougher times and things like that. Again, that's why I hate the whole schedule argument because there's things you can't control on both sides. You can't control who you play. You can't how they're doing. You can't control injuries. So that's why, again, that's why college football is so stupid, and they're run by stupid people, and they have fans that are stupid because we make these stupid arguments that are absolutely idiotic. But nonetheless,
the conclusion of that is the only people who are not stupid in college football is us. So,
and Chris Ballard.
Can I just chime in and say I love the irony that Eric is saying he's trashing college football fans and how they don't listen to things on a podcast, on a college football podcast.
Here we are.
I love it. I love it.
And by the way, I will throw myself into that category. I've acted stupid as a college football guy myself, and then I look back at it and I'm saying, what the heck was I thinking? What am I doing? What did I say that for? Like, wow, we're number one. Like, that's the dumbest argument. We're number one. Like, what is that? But nonetheless.
I never say that.
No, you don't. That's credit to you on that.
But okay.
Again, UCF, it's not UCF's fault that the schedule is how it's playing out how it is. And I don't think they should be punished necessarily for it. But the reality is the schedule is what it is, and it's not good. And I think you can't defend it. It's nothing you can do about it. You just have to dominate. To your point, Jeff, that's why it's no longer good enough to just win. You have to win impressively. Otherwise, fans will criticize your team. It happens everywhere, by the way. This is not just UCF. In defense of UCF fans, this is not just a UCF thing. They do the same thing at Alabama. They do the same thing all over the country in college football. That's where we're at. It's like gymnastics. It's not good enough to just win. You've got to win with style so you can score points for polls.
Well, interesting you mentioned that. Another flawless segue by you, Eric Lopez. So you're 2 for 2 on the evening. I wrote earlier this week on blackandgoldbanneret.com that actually UCF is well ahead of last year's pace in the rankings, in the AP and the college and the coaches poll. Now, I know that this doesn't matter because the CFP rankings come out on October the 30th. That's the first College Football Playoff Committee rankings. But right now, after the FAU win, UCF jumped 3 spots in the AP poll to number 13. And 4 spots in the coaches poll to number 14. Now, this past week was week 4 that UCF is ranked in those spots. We're heading into week 5. UCF in 2017 did not get ranked in either poll until after week 5. And at that point, they were ranked 25th in both polls. Now, it's entirely conceivable that UCF could be even reach, I think, as high as 10 or be even closer to that, depending upon which teams may lose directly ahead of them. And if UCF is, let's say, in that 10, 11, 12 range at the start of week 5, where they were 25th last year, now all of a sudden you have to look at this, and this is what we argued about before, Eric, was that head start in the preseason rankings, I think, does matter, because if there's a war of attrition ahead of UCF, it's going to be, and UCF continues to play well through the month of October. At what point does the CFP committee say, guys, we have to put them near, at least near this point. We have to put them in the top 6 because they've done the job to this point. It would look silly if UCF was in the top 10 in the AP and the coaches and was ranked 14th in the CFP, no?
Depends. Not necessarily. I mean, I think they'll be, if you're asking me, I think they'll be ranked higher in the college football playoff poll compared to last year. So do I think they'll be ranked maybe a couple spots higher, 2, 3? Do I think they'll be in the top 10, for example? Come the final Saturday after Championship Saturday? Yeah, I think they'll be inside the top 10. This is the thing. We've argued about this since last year. I don't understand why people are that fired up about, hey, we're number 8 instead of number 4. Like, if you're not in the top 4, who cares if you're ranked 5 or 15? But that's beyond my point. By the way, let's be fair and balanced. Coley Matrix, our buddy, may have turned his back on us. UCF's currently ranked 20th in Coley Matrix.
Whatever, I don't care about that.
What are you talking about? That's where we won the national title, Jeffrey. Can I read you the rankings for Coley Matrix, by the way? Because I love this.
Who's he got number 1?
Alabama, bias. Stanford, number 2.
Woo!
All right.
Yeah, you like that? LSU, 3. Georgia, 4. This is my favorite. Duke, number 5.
Okay.
Coach K, baby.
Okay.
Notre Dame, 6. Penn State, 7. Oklahoma, 8. Clemson, 9. Kentucky, 10.
This is a basketball.
Clearly not a large enough sample
Oh, it
size
gets
at
better.
this point in the season.
No, it gets better. I love this. Syracuse, Jeffrey, your other alma mater, 11. Babers, baby.
Syracuse is undefeated, baby. Hey, take a picture.
Buffalo is 12th.
Shout out to
Khalil
Tony.
Mack got more eligibility.
Yeah, shout out to Tony Daniel in UCF marketing.
South Florida, 14th. We're not even the highest rated team in the conference. South Florida's ranked ahead of us.
Wow.
That big Illinois, I guess, has it over there. North Texas, who we've now this must be a historic record with repeated references towards North Texas. North Texas ranked 15th in Coley Matrix, baby, ahead of Ohio State, who's 16. West Virginia 17, Cincinnati 18. Who says the American ain't a power conference? We got 3 teams in the top 20. South Carolina's 19, UCF's 20. There's your top 20. In fact, it is my duty every week now from here on out, while you guys focus on the college football playoff and that meaningless poll and the AP, I will be updating everybody on the weekly Coley Matrix poll as UCF's quest to repeat. Could be in jeopardy, Jeffrey.
Jeff, we need to ask the fans to start creating drops for us for the segments that we're building on the show.
You know what? I'm going to put okay. If we got drops, if anyone wants to put a drop in there, you got to holler at us at blackandgoldbanneret@gmail.com.
We need
something for Elo's Collie Matrix update,
and we need something for Elo's rant about stupid college football fans.
Yeah. Elo versus the fans.
These are weekly segments.
So help me out here, both of you, because we all trashed the college football committee, right? They're biased. They have an agenda. Yada yada yada.
Okay. Well, let me clarify something. I concede that they're biased because they're humans. I also do think that they have an agenda. There's a difference between the two.
So if UCF, give me the number. If UCF is ranked, let's say, top 6 in the final poll of the college football playoff, are you going to feel better? Do you feel better? Do you feel justified? Do you feel good? Do you feel angry? I don't know. Help me out here because
where in the top 6?
Let's say they're number 5. Better? You say, oh, great.
No, I'm not. Because if UCF is undefeated, okay. Who else would be undefeated?
Alabama.
Okay.
Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma.
So you're saying those 4 teams would be undefeated ahead of UCF?
Yeah. Or if you want, we can play your game. I'll say this: the Big Ten champion is in with 1 loss, and then the other, we'll go with that.
Some of those teams could have 1 loss and still be ahead of UCF.
Okay, so all right, we'll play that game then. We'll play with that game, Murph.
It's relevant. It's relevant.
No, okay, fair.
Yeah.
I'll say that Alabama. We'll say Alabama in. Let's say Alabama is in with a loss, which is always happens. The Big Ten champion, 1 loss, is in. Oklahoma's in, and Clemson.
Okay, so now I'm going to get really annoying.
Okay.
Who are the losses to?
Oh my God.
I warned you.
All right, let's say Ohio State or whoever. Let's say the Big Ten champion loses on the road, whether it be Penn State at Michigan or Ohio State
in the regular season. Are any of those losses in the conference championships?
No.
Okay.
But if you want to play that game, we could play that game with Alabama and Georgia. If you want to play that game,
I would be ticked if I was a UCF fan and UCF was ranked 5th. And every team ahead of them, or 3 teams ahead of them, had 1 loss. And if one of those losses occurred during championship weekend, I would be I would be taking to the streets.
All right. So let me play this. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, go ahead.
That's fine. Let me ask you this. So let's say they put UCF at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, is the system better now?
Yeah.
Why?
Because at least you're saying yes, non-Power 5 conference teams have a shot.
Yeah, but doesn't that defeat? But then this whole argument, the whole year about this committee being biased and this and that is negligent. It's not. See, here's my point.
No, it's not.
I don't care if UCF.
No, it's not. Because if UCF gets in, what they're finally saying is actually yes, they are saying that we're going to have a shot. Now, once you get into the playoff, whatever happens, happens. Okay?
Of course.
That's what UCF is saying, the same thing that every other individual athlete is saying. Just give us a shot. If we lose, we lose. Give us a shot.
Yeah, but that's not just a UCF thing. Like, to me, just because you lose on a championship Saturday, if you feel you're one of the best teams in the country, you shouldn't be eliminated by that. See, I don't change my stance. I think the system's terrible regardless, whether you put UCF in, whether you put Boise in or not. That doesn't change my opinion. I think the system needs to expand.
You wouldn't say that it's less bad than we thought?
No, I think it's bad equal every year. I think the system's flawed every year. Here's the thing. Whether people liked it or not, they put Alabama in. I didn't have a problem with putting Alabama in because they proved they were the best team in the country. They won both playoff games. And just because you don't win your conference doesn't mean you're not the best team. We've seen that in the NFL constantly. Hell, your beloved New York Giants make history off of that. They don't win divisions. They just win Super Bowls.
Okay, true, but you can't make an NFL argument in a college football argument.
Sure you can.
No,
sure
you can't
because the NFL is a better system. If college football would adapt a similar system with the NFL, which is have criteria, we wouldn't be having this conversation. No matter what the committee does, no matter what criteria what things you put there, there's no criteria. You're always going to have arguments. You're always going to leave somebody out. And I don't think just because UCF's ranked 4th or 5th or 6th that makes the system better. I don't think all of a sudden we should say, all right, guys, the system's fixed. We're good. Let's move forward. No, I think the system needs to be fixed regardless.
See, I think that if UCF is undefeated and you have like 2 or 3 one-loss teams ahead of them, the committee, which is a group of humans, right?
Yeah.
They know that they have a lot of pressure riding on that decision.
Sure.
If they were to snub UCF a second year in a row, they risk delegitimizing themselves in the eyes of the viewing public.
Some people have already done that, though. That's the thing.
Okay,
no matter
but
what
if you
they
do it twice, if you do it twice in a row, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
So is the moral of the story is if you go undefeated, it doesn't matter who you play? Is that how we get into the playoffs? Should every team just play FCS teams, try to be undefeated?
No, that's irrelevant. What I'm saying is if the competition ahead of you is not as good, all right, if they've lost 1 or even 2 games, and if you're UCF and you've won and you would have won by that time 25, 26 games in a row, and you still get left out of the party, that's preposterous. That's ridiculous.
But first of all, there's
and at that point, UCF fans are justified in saying, what can this team or any of the other 65 group of 5 teams, what can any of them possibly do? We've done everything we've been asked to do the last 2 years, and it doesn't matter.
Correct, it doesn't.
And that's a broken system. That's an illegitimate system.
Yes, it is, and I've said that for decades. Welcome to the party. This is nothing new. This has been going on for decades.
Okay, but what you're saying is, oh well, we know it's an illegitimate system, but it's the system. And I'm saying, we know, all right. And if it's illegitimate, then it needs to be changed immediately.
Yeah, and I think the electoral college needs to be changed, but that hasn't been changed either. That's the system. That's what we have. I'm not surprised by this. This is nothing new. I don't like how people are shocked by that. They've come to this revelation all of a sudden. 20 years ago, Tulane was undefeated, didn't sniff anything. Boise State's been undefeated. TCU's been undefeated. This has been going on for years and years and years, and this sport works at a very slow tempo. We just expanded to 4. They used to do the stupid 2 teams. We've had chances where teams don't even play for head-to-head. We have had stupid split titles. We're slowly moving. Until you put criterias, here's the argument. Here's the thing. I don't believe just because you go undefeated, you should be you're one of the best teams. I think the whole thing is who's the best teams? Are you undefeated? Do you have 1 loss? Who did you play? Who did you beat? I do think those things matter. Now, I agree with you. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I think if UCF has won a lot of games and you believe they're one of the best teams in the country, they should be in. They should get the opportunity. It's funny, though, that we're using the win streak as a reason to get them in, because weren't we upset about the fact that teams get the benefit of the doubt because of last year and their brand names, and now we're trying to use the win streak to our benefit, even though technically last year should not matter as far as getting into the playoff this year, right? That's the whole argument. It shouldn't matter, correct?
I'm just saying that if you have that much of a head start and it's still and you still get locked out of the party, that is proof positive that the system is broken and it's illegitimate and it needs to be changed and change needs to be forced.
Agree.
At that point.
Well, I mean, the problem is the NCAA doesn't run the sport. That's where this problem.
No,
it's like boxing.
You're right. But the committee runs it, and if they want to, and they run the risk of ruining the sport if they do that. I think because I think that a large number of fans would probably turn off those semifinal games because
that's not true though. See, that's wrong. See, that's inaccurate because their ratings actually went up last year, and they would argue to you that Alabama being in over UCF actually generates more interest than that. That's the interesting myth about this.
I don't know. I mean, that's a hard argument to make, but let's say. Give me a team that might go undefeated and say the Big Ten.
No, because this has been the conversation that's been going on with the NCAA tournament in basketball. We all love Cinderella. We all love the George Masons and the VCUs to get to the Final Four, but yet the TV ratings have shown when VCU and George Mason are in the Final Four, the numbers go down the tubes. But when the big blue brands like Kentucky and Duke are in, the ratings go up. So us as fans are hypocritical. We want the underdog, but yet when the underdog makes the run, we don't watch. So we're just as to blame as much as anybody.
Okay, so then let's say West Virginia goes undefeated and wins the Big 12. All right. Yep. Are they a big enough brand let's say it's between UCF and say West Virginia for that fourth spot? You're saying that they would still pick West Virginia because they're the bigger brand?
Yeah, because they would have beaten Oklahoma. They would have won the Big 12 title in a bigger program.
I don't know, man.
By the way, I'll give you an example because some people would argue in 2014 that Ohio State got picked over TCU because of the brand. Because Ohio State was a bigger brand name than TCU. Some people thought TCU should have been in the playoff that year. So it's not just isolated to the group of the quote non-Power 5 teams. Some would argue TCU fans are still pissed off that they got left out in 2014 and they felt they got shortchanged because Ohio State was a bigger brand name. And remember, Ohio State had just lost their starting quarterback for the year a week earlier. I mean, imagine that you put a team in the playoff with a backup quarterback. Now it worked. Ohio State won the national title. But just the premise of it was controversial. So this is nothing new to the sport. This is nothing new. I don't think UCF's going to get in regardless of what they do. I do think they'll be ranked higher. I don't think the system is still going to change. And I think until it changes with criterias, I don't think the UCFs and the Boise's will get in. But I do think there will be some pressure. And I think UCF will be more in the conversation to some extent. But I think at the end of the day, you're not getting in over an SEC team. You're not getting in over a Big Ten champion. You're not getting in over a Big 12 champion. It's not going to happen.
We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll bring Murph back into the conversation to actually talk about Pitt.
Hi, I'm still here.
And we'll talk about TV and we'll talk about the Olympic sports and some of the other things going on here in a little bit. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, brokered by eXp Realty. Sam Unger and his team proudly serve Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties, specializing in buying, selling, and new construction. He's a proud UCF graduate, class of 2006, and he's got a special deal going on right now for the 2018 football season. Night fans, if you work with Sam as your realtor, he will rebate you up to $750 at closing. So, if you're ready to buy a new home or sell your current home, upgrade or downsize, Sam and his team have you covered so you can find the right home at the right price in the right location. So give them a call right now at 407-790-9957. Again, that's 407-790-9957. Or visit them on the web at WeSellOrlando.net. Again, that's WeSellOrlando.net. You can also reach them on Facebook at facebook.com/WeSellOrlando. Get in touch with the Unger Real Estate Group today and make finding your dream home a reality.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here. UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and blackandgoldbanneret.com. SB Nation's home for UCF sports. Let's get back to football now that we've beaten the CFP horse to a bloody pulp here.
And just for the record, I would want UCF to be in. Again, I want UCF to be in. I'm just being realistic. I don't want people to be shocked when they don't get in. I try to tell people what's going to happen so they don't act shocked. That's all I'm saying.
So about the Pittsburgh Panthers here, they come in 2-2. ACC team, I get it. Coming off a loss to North Carolina. This is a very run-heavy team. Murph, you've been around the team this week. You were at the press conferences. What is it about this game that makes it feel like it's not a game against an ACC team? I don't get it. It feels like there should be more hype, more excitement about a golden opportunity against a fellow Power 6 team than we're getting right now. Am I wrong in that assertion?
The reason why this doesn't feel like, it's us versus Goliath is because the Goliath, or the supposed Goliath in this picture, is UCF. And yep. Pittsburgh is no better than the other good teams in the AAC. Pittsburgh lost to North Carolina, whom we know has had a dreadful season prior to the hurricane. They're awful. So the reason why this game doesn't feel as important as it would, say, 5 years ago is because UCF's a better team, bar none. As far as what the coaches are saying, yes, Pittsburgh is very run-heavy. This is the biggest team in terms of bulk that they will see on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Josh Heupel, I think, said kind of an interesting thing about how Pittsburgh brings on defense. Pittsburgh brings their safeties into the box to stop the run. And he basically said flat out, like, our receivers on the outside are going to have to win one-on-one matchups, which again, this certainly these receivers can do. But I think that's something that we're going to have to watch. I mean, if you're going to get Mackenzie Milton and then Gabe Davis or Trey Nixon or even Dredrick Nelson in the slot one-on-one, like that could be some fun. So
you're not kidding.
If Pittsburgh's going to bring their safeties down, aren't they kind of playing into UCF's hands a little bit?
I can't even believe that that's being talked about if you're Pitt's defensive coordinator.
Well,
why in the world would you do that?
Heupel has said it this week, so we'll see what happens. And then defensively, yes, they're a running team. They basically run entirely through Kadri Olison, who, although Pitt ranks I think 101st in total offense, Olison ranks 31st in rushing offense by himself. He actually has, I believe, 14 more yards than Devin Singletary on 21 fewer carries. And he is 6'2", 225. So by comparison, Singletary was about 5'9", 200. UCF obviously had a really hard time, wrangling him with one guy. And now here comes a 6'2", 225 bulldozer. They're going to really need to shore up again on the tackling front. So again, that sounds like something we've hit on every week, but it's going to also play a gigantic role in this game.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned obviously the rushing, but this is a much different rushing attack, I think, than what FAU is bringing to the table. This is a much more classic I formation power rushing team that UCF is facing. Styles make fights, I get it, but this seems like we might be looking at on offensively a big day for some of those guys on the outside, like you said. And this might be, who knows, this might be Adrian Killens and Otis Anderson's coming out party this year, because I think that those guys have not had, to this point, they haven't had the breakout performances that we've been waiting for just yet. This might be the chance, no?
Well, Hypo has said. Sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No, you're right. I agree with that. I agree with Jeff on that. So I was just going to agree with him on that. But you go ahead, Murph.
Well, Hypo has said, that they're really close to breaking big runs. They're really close to sealing off that second level and shooting those gaps. Because Adrian has not had one of those typical 50-yard bursts. I think his longest run this year is 24 yards.
That was that touchdown against UConn, right?
No, actually, all of his 20-yard runs came against South Carolina State.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He had 3 20-yard runs in that game. He hasn't had a run above 15 yards in the other 2 games. I did a thing on this a little bit in another newspaper, shall we say, a newspaper in Orlando.
It's okay. You can admit that
that you can read about it tomorrow, though.
Yeah,
Just saying.
Yeah, it's on dead trees. It's okay. It's fine.
I love how Murph is going the old wrestling school. Won't mention the other competitors.
Won't mention the other. You won't mention the other territory. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the Orlando Sentinel.
I got no
shout out.
Yeah.
Shout out to Matt Michelle, my boy over there. What's up, man?
Name dropping.
Shout out
anyway,
to Ileana for doing the right thing and bringing Brian on to do some work for the Sentinel. But anyway, go ahead.
Because of the way Pittsburgh plays. And because if they're going to bring their safeties down in the box, this is probably not going to be the coming out party for an Otis Anderson or Adrian's going to have a 150-yard game. I mean, if they're going to put, 8, 9 in the box, I think UCF's going to say, fine, we'll take your one safety. We'll take your cover one defense with your corners on the outside and just sort of slant you to death and run some 9 routes and then see if you can get with these guys one-on-one deep. So I really do think this is going to be more of a passing game than anything else.
Concerns about the deep. Well, we talk about obviously the rushing game, but you think that this is the opportunity that the defense finally has to alleviate some of those concerns? Because, like I said, this is a pretty. I know you said FAU is a mostly one-dimensional team, but they don't line up like they are. Pitt is kind of a smash mouth team, at least at this point,
right?
And you know what's coming here. So
yeah,
concerns about that though.
Pitt brings in a bunch of guys, a bunch of the old stereotypical big corn-fed Midwestern kids, who are now playing offensive line, who are just big dudes who want to push you out of the way and sort of grind you into the dirt. And they play a very it's a very old school style of ball. So UCF is going to have to be physical at the point of the attack, as I throw in a coach's cliche. And to see them sort of, no one, they've been very clear that this is the most physically imposing matchup they've faced so far. Granted, what they have faced so far wasn't not exactly imposing, but I think in any instance, Pitt is a very imposing team up front. That defensive line is going to have its work cut out for them. It'll be interesting to see if their tackling improves, but also as the game goes along. It's a 3:30 kick. The temperature is supposed to be 91 at kick, but the heat index will be in the high 90s. In Pitt this week, it was high 70s. Tyler Hudanik, who's left guard for UCF, grew up in Pennsylvania, grew up about 30 minutes north of the Pitt Panther campus, and he basically admits he's not even used to the heat. So they're not going to be used to the heat when they come down here. As the game goes along, how much of that becomes a war of attrition for Pittsburgh with the heat beating down on them at 4:30, 5:30, while UCF's offense is running these 2-minute drives. Can their defense keep up in the third and fourth quarters? That's where I think this game kind of gets out of hand. I do think this will be a close game relatively through the first half, much like the FAU game, but I do think FSU, goodness gracious, I do think UCF pours it on near the second half.
Look, just giving you some of the measurables on some of these Pitt guys. In terms of the offensive line, I'm looking up and down their roster. Everybody's over 6'3", and everyone's over 290, and you got guys like, Mike Herndon, who's 6'4", 310. You got Stefano Millen, who's 6'5", 300, 6'4", 310, 6'5", 305, 6'3", 315, 6'5", 320, 6'6", 315. There's some road graders on this roster. And by the way, we should know this because former UCF coach is actually Pitt's tight end coach. Everybody remember Tim Salem?
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, he's the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator. I believe George O'Leary threw under the bus at one point.
He
about
did
10 years ago.
He did. It threw him under the bus. Actually, demoted him and hired Charlie Taft to be the offensive coordinator after UCF's offense was considered to be almost non-existent at one point. Tim Salem is now the tight ends coach at Pitt. It's good to see Tim landing on his feet. I mean, I've met him a couple times. He's a nice guy. It's just, it was a bad situation at UCF. But again, 3:30 kick on ESPNU. I mean, the weather, I think, will be a factor if it's going to be hot. Go ahead, Eric.
Isn't this two parts here? I think we learned a lot about the line of scrimmage for UCF, right? D line. We talked about how they struggled a bit against FAU. You got to believe that Pitt wants to shorten this game, run the football, and eat the clock. Like, have the football for at least 2/3 of the game to have any chance in this game. And I think this is where the bend or the don't break defense could come back to bite you. If you give up 8-9 minute drives and all of a sudden you're shortening the game, there's added pressure. And I think that's what Pitt's goal is going to be. They're going to try to be physical and try to, I think, put pressure on Milton. I think Pitt knows they can't cover UCF. And I think when they say they're going to put extra guys in the box, it doesn't necessarily mean just to stop the run. It might just mean they want to put pressure on Mackenzie Milton too. So it'll be interesting to see how the offensive line and defensive line hold up against a Pitt team that's known for their physicality. That being said, I do agree with Murph. I just think that UCF, Pitt's not going to come from behind. I don't think Pitt has to play from the lead, and I think if UCF jumps on them early, it's going to be a long day for Pittsburgh. And in fact, I'll give you a couple stats here of note.
Go for it.
Right. UCF's 13.5 point favorite, right? Pittsburgh is 2-3-2 against the spread in their last 7 road games. UCF is 4-1 in their last 5 games against the spread. In comparison, so don't be afraid by the spread number. And here's another one. Ready for this? 6 of the last 8 UCF games have gone over the total, whereas 6 of the last 7 Pitt road games have gone under. Pitt does not want to get into a shootout. That's what that tells you. If you're Pitt, you want this game to be probably in the 40s and the 50s combined, whereas UCF wants to be this in the 60s or 70s. Pitt probably has a max. I think Pitt knows that for them to pull the upset, they probably have to do a 30-24 type of game. If it gets into the high 30s, 40s, that's all UCF, and I think that's going to be the issue for Pitt.
You know, what's funny is you mentioned, Pitt would want to keep the ball for 2/3 of the game, 40 minutes. It's entirely conceivable that Pitt could have a 40-minute to 20-minute time of possession edge and get blown out.
Right.
Yes, correct.
So
because if they don't execute right. I think an underrated stat, third down conversions.
Yep, big.
Key. Get off the field, stay on the field. I think that's a stat that kind of gets under. People always focus on time of possession and things like that. Third down conversions is UCF's been very good on third downs, especially on offense. That's why they've been so good. They haven't had those too many 3-and-outs. Yeah. And I think that's why it doesn't matter if they've only had the ball for 20 minutes. That only comes to play is if your offense has too many 3-and-outs.
By the way, not only is UCF good on third downs, they're the best in the country. Yep. They've converted 65.8% of their third down conversions.
That is incredible when you think about it. Converting third downs, converting 2/3 of your third downs. It's really insane when you think about it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've got one thing I did want to touch upon, and Eric, you talked about this on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Pretty good TV numbers for UCF for a Friday night game, which Friday night in television terms is the dead zone. Okay, nobody watches television on Friday night. That's why if you're trying to get rid of a bad sitcom, you move it to Friday night. That's what TV executives do. All right, well, UCF played.
The sitcom still exists?
Believe it or not, yes, they've all been moved to Friday night.
TGIF.
Yeah, the days of that are long gone.
I know. Although Murphy Brown's back though, so we got that going.
Yeah, well, what's old is new again. That's how TV works.
Yeah. Also, they've run out of ideas.
Why think of original ideas when we can just rehash the ideas we had 30 years ago? Let's make money off of that.
They came up with Magnum PI without Tom Selleck.
Yeah, but Tom Selleck's not there.
They're coming back with Roseanne without Roseanne. Well, it's the Connor family show.
No, they're bringing Roseanne back a second time without Roseanne. That's what's funny. Think about that for a second. Anyway, So UCF got really good numbers. 1 million viewers on ESPN on ESPNU for the FAU game, which is really impressive for a Friday night. This week against Pitt, they are starting on ESPNU at 3:30. Here's what they're going up against: Baylor at Oklahoma on ABC, Tennessee at Georgia on CBS, Michigan Northwestern on Fox. That's at 4:30, by the way.
Which by the way, that'll be the highest rated game in that whole entire block you just mentioned. Will be that Michigan. It's amazing. The Big Ten, Michigan has an enormous following. It's incredible. That game.
They get the big markets too because the Northeast.
Good point.
ESPN2, no game on ESPN until 6. They have a game at noon and then a game at 6.
Mississippi State, Florida.
Yeah.
Dan Mullen going back
to
Starkville.
But no game on the mothership in the 3:30 slot, which I find weird. ESPN.
What are they carrying?
I don't know. Golf maybe? I don't know. Are they doing the Ryder? I don't know. ESPN2's got Florida State at Louisville, and Pitt at UCF is on ESPNU. What else do we have here? Oh, Texas at Kansas State on FS1. So my question to you is, Eric Lopez, TV sage as you are, what are the chances here? I mean, this is UCF against an ACC opponent, but it's on the U. It's in the prime time, not prime time, but it's in the major time slot in the 3:30, 4 o'clock area. What are the chances here of a good number? I don't know. I just think there's way too much across for them.
Well, it's hard to try to predict an ESPNU audience. First of all, it's not as many audiences, TV cable systems, etc. have ESPNU. I will use my personal experience from last week as an example, just for full disclosure. I was at a hospital. My mom was in the hospital. Everything's okay right now,
which we're very happy to report.
Yes, so I spent my Saturday at a hospital. So I was watching football. Well, guess what? I didn't have ESPNU. I had ESPN. I had ESPN2. I actually had ESPN Classic, which was weird. But I didn't have but I didn't have ESPNU. And I've been to hotels which has been similar, where some hotels don't carry ESPNU. So you're losing about 10 to 20 million homes comparison from ESPN2, for example, to ESPNU. So that does make a difference for those that were wondering. So from that standpoint, you're not going to draw a huge number on ESPNU, not to mention the games you mentioned. I mean, Michigan Northwestern, I think of that block, the highest rated game of the week will be Penn State, Ohio State by far. But I think obviously Michigan Northwestern will be big. I think if you're UCF Pitt, I think the interesting dilemma, what was the FS1 game they're going up head to head against?
It'll be Texas at Kansas State.
I think that's a better, more realistic goal. Can they come close to that game? Because they beat the UCF-FAU game, beat Penn State, Illinois, which was on FS1 at the same time, about an hour difference. So usually ESPNU has a chance, usually is competitive with FS1, which, you can make your own conclusions on that. But by the way, ESPN Goal Line will be on ESPN during that time. That's why they're not carrying.
Okay.
They got line. But obviously the networks will have the bigger numbers. I think if I had to bet, I would say that UCF Pitt, if you can get about 200 to 300,000 viewers, I would consider that I think ESPN would be happy with that slot on ESPNU. If they can get 200 to 300, I think South Carolina, when they played South Carolina there, in fact, you can check it out on Black Gold Banneret. I believe they had over 300,000 viewers. That was the previous highest rated UCF game on ESPNU before the UConn game broke that, which had over 400,000. But remember, that was on a Thursday night, not as many games as there would be on a Saturday. So I would say if you can get 200 to 300, that's a huge success from that standpoint.
All right. So, again, 3:30. And who's the crew for that game again, Eric?
Mike Corey and Rini Ngolier, my good friend Rini Ngolier, of course, who is obviously ESPN analyst and is a police officer here in the Central Florida area in Orlando.
That's good. So we got to have.
Cool story.
Rini's been he's done his share of UCF games quite a bit in the past, so it's good to have him back.
Home game. Yeah, it's a home game.
Yeah, he doesn't have to travel far. So all right, so we've got that ready to rock for you. Let's take a look at some Olympic sports coming up. Before we get to soccer and volleyball, I know Brian Murphy's just been itching all hour to get to this. fall ball's starting up for UCF baseball, baby.
Guys, I know MLB is winding down, but college baseball is just beginning. Let's go out. It's free admission for anybody who wants to come out and watch UCF on Sunday play Seminole State, I believe it is. They're practicing tomorrow. I might go to practice tomorrow after I talk to Josh Heupel. Why not? It's baseball, so it's good.
Baseball's back, baby. And softball's actually starting up also as well, aren't they?
Yeah, next Friday, I think, actually, they have their first fall ball game. They're going to play up. They're playing mostly every Friday in October. The big one is October 19th, by the way. They're going to play Florida on October 19th. But, yeah, Cindy Ball, first game.
Yeah.
Will be a week from this Friday.
We get our first look at Coach Bear. Yeah.
That's also free, like Murph is. So, yes, fall ball for baseball.
What do they really do in these fall ball games? Like to what extent are they actually competitive?
Well, I mean, they play. I mean, now there's a lot of things. I mean, they change lineups up a little bit, and sometimes they'll play a 10-inning game in softball. I can't speak for baseball. Considering this year, Murph, correct me if I'm wrong, the UCF for the first time is actually playing other opponents. In the past, they would just do the Black and Gold series. But what's unique about this, Murph, right, is they're going to actually play other schools, small schools like junior colleges and all that, but just like softball does. But that's what's fascinating is they're going to be playing a different opponent. I'm sure they'll have certain rules. They'll probably, they're more flexible as far as letting players probably come back in and out. They do it at least in softball because they want to give different looks to different people. Sometimes they'll play a 10-inning game so they can get as many looks. You're going to see a lot of pitchers. If I had to guess, Murph, would you agree? Like almost, I would say you would see a lot of pitchers maybe throw a couple innings here and there just so everybody gets a look, right? So, I mean, that's the same way in softball. Yeah.
This is basically like free exhibition. You want to get your guys out there and see what they look like against live competition. UCF is playing, I think, Seminole State.
Yep.
Seminole State on Sunday, and then next Sunday they're playing the Canadian junior national team, and then the always illustrious St. Leo on the following Friday. So three games against other competition. It's just out there to see what you got. It's really sort of like, okay, let's see them in live action.
Elo, we need to get your boy Jason Arnold out there to get East Florida up here for a little fall ball action, huh?
Well, yeah. Well, his softball program is going to be playing UCF on next Friday, so I can maybe we could get the word out there.
Put in a good word.
My question, Murph, are you going to? I need you to ask Lovely. This is the most important question.
Yes.
What's his feelings on Undertaker Triple H wrestling one last time?
Oh, God in heaven, I'm cutting this out.
I will definitely ask. Jeffrey, you can't cut this out.
Oh, my
you
God.
You talked for 5 minutes about other stupid stuff on this show. We can do 2 minutes on wrestling. I definitely will ask that. He wants to talk about it more than baseball in October. Let's go.
I just want to know if he's offended by it. Like, I mean, it's very offensive that these two are going to do basically a house show in Australia here. And, it's just,
I think we all, what I mean by that is you, me, and Greg Lovelady, we're all there at the Undertaker's quote unquote retirement at WrestleMania last year. That wasn't his retirement, still is not his retirement. He continues to wrestle and now will wrestle again. I think every match that he does sort of makes us upset because we got robbed of what we thought was a special moment.
So what you're saying is you guys all got worked.
We're marked, Jeffrey. We are marked.
You guys got marked and worked. Congratulations.
Good job. All
right. Let's talk volleyball. They began their conference slate last Friday at USF in Tampa and got a victory in 5 in a very hard-fought match between UCF and USF. You knew that was coming. UCF wins in 5, 15-10 in the 5th. For UCF, the key performers, McKenna Melville is just laying waste to everything in sight. 21 kills. Even though she hit 175, she recorded 16 digs as well. 21 more digs for Jordan Pingle, 14 for Aaron Olson to go with 27 assists, and 14 kills for Brianna Garcia, who just continues to chug along. This is a big win for UCF because they were down in this match 2-1, fought back in the 4th to take it 25-23, and then one in the fifth. And and Todd talked about last week after the tournament, after the Yale match, about how there are going to be those nights in conference where just nothing is going right. They withstood 4 double-digit kill performances by USF players, and still got the job done. So congrats to UCF Volleyball on getting started right now in the. I'm looking in the rankings here. They're not receiving any votes in the rankings, which is a bummer. The AVCA coaches poll and the RPI hasn't come out yet, so we're still just waiting on that. But that was a big win for them against USF to get started in the conference. They are at Tulane and Memphis this weekend. Friday, 1 p.m. at Tulane in New Orleans, followed by Sunday, 1 p.m. at Memphis. So that's a good. Those are again 2 more away matches coming up before they come back home. Friday, October 5th.
If they can get to 3-0, Jeffrey, on the road, I mean, it's winnables. I mean, Tulane's probably. Would you say Tulane's the harder of the 2 road matches based on? Because I know they've had fits at Tulane. Tulane's been pretty good. Memphis has kind of been at the bottom. I know Memphis. It's always tough to win on the road, but if they can somehow get to 3-0 on the road with the first 3 on the road, that is huge from a lot of ramifications, from an NCAA tournament postseason, from a conference tournament championship aspirations. 2-1 would even be good, but if they can, I'm fascinated to see how they come out.
Yeah, this week. Well, Tulane, sorry, Eric. Tulane right now they're off to an 0-2 start in the conference, but they're 12-5 overall, and they're 7-0 at home. They lost those 2 matches on the road. Memphis is 7-7. They also started 0-2 in the league, so they're kind of in a rough spot right now. The class of the league right now looks at it. It's kind of all mixed up right now because Wichita State got off to a rough start in non-conference play, but they won their first 2 matches in conference. They're 7-6. You have 10-4 Tulsa, who's 2-0. You have 5-7 SMU, who's 2-0 in the league, and then you have obviously 10-3 UCF, 10-4 Cincinnati at 1-0, and Cincinnati, of course, has Jordan Thompson back. And then you have 3 clubs that are winless in conference after the first weekend that all have at least 11 wins. USF is 11-3, Houston's 13-4, Tulane's 12-5. So we're gonna find out what the score is this weekend starting, I think.
So 3-0 would be tremendous. But if you can split, go 2-1 in conference, your first 3 on the road, I think you take that, right?
I'll take a split on the road any day. I think if you can take splits on the road and you defend your home court, you're well on your way to that to that regular season conference title, which is the whole kit and caboodle because there's no tournament. So, I mean, if you have Wichita State who goes 20-0 again in conference, I mean, congratulations. But I don't think that's going to happen again this year. No. The challenge is there. I think the window is open in volleyball. So, be aware for that. Friday and Sunday, UCF volleyball on the road. Men's soccer. We got to talk about men's soccer for a little bit here. They got off to a rough start to their conference slate at Temple. They lost 1-0. They come back home Friday night against SMU, and that'll be on UCFnights.tv. And that's big for UCF men's soccer because SMU is one of the favorites coming in. The Knights right now, even though they're 5-2-1, they're 36th. The RPI is out for men's soccer. They're 36th.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
SMU right now is 62nd in the RPI, but they were one of the big teams coming in. All right, and
they're the defending champions. They're the SMU beat UCF in overtime in the conference championship game in Dallas.
Yeah. Now UCF is receiving votes in the coaches poll. They received 3 votes still, even despite the 5-2-1 start and the loss to Temple. But here again, you don't have anybody else in the American currently receiving any votes in the top 25. So. Getting going against an SMU team would be a big help for UCF coming in, as if they can just get off that schneid in conference. You win that first conference match, I mean, I think that's going to be key.
Well, especially against the defending champs. I mean, tiebreakers. I mean, swings. I mean, this is going to be a big match. They've had some memorable matches when these two have played. They've usually actually drawn men's soccer. Usually their bigger draws have been SMU. I mean, that's usually SMU's a great program. So it's interesting to see how they come out.
Yeah, overall, SMU comes in 4-3-1. UCF right now 5-2-1, like we mentioned, but SMU is 1-0 in the league. So so if they get the chance, this is the perfect opportunity for UCF to take care of business at home. Where the Knights are 2-1-1 this year, the only loss coming in that opener against California Davis. So, and hey, like we said, man, I mean, this is a tight conference race. You only have 7 conference matches. So now's the time if you're going to make it happen. Speaking of now is the time. Women's soccer right now, they're 3-3-1. They have that extended week off since they last played, obviously, Sunday, September 16th. They start their conference slate Thursday, September 27th at 3:30 in the afternoon at Temple. They start their conference schedule with that Temple-UConn swing up north, and I'm glad they're doing it now instead of like late in the season when the weather gets bad. But they don't come back home until Thursday, October 4th against East Carolina. Sunday at noon is when they're at UConn. That's in Stories, and of course at Temple 3:30 Thursday. I was taking a peek at the women's soccer RPI, Eric Lopez, which also is out for the first time. The Knights right now, it's 87th.
Yeah.
So they got some work to do, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, the George Mason loss, I know you guys talked about it. That was a perplexer, Jeffrey, after the Florida win.
Yeah, that was a head-scratcher.
Just inconsistent. And the thing that it's actually weird, Florida, because of their struggles, is not rated very high in the RPI. So that win, which normally was a top 5, top 10 RPI win, is not the case right now. I don't know what – I got to be honest with you, Jeff. I don't know what to expect from this team. I don't have a feel for this team. Sometimes,
I don't think they have a feel for one another at this point right now.
I think that's a great point. That's a great point. So you're right, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how they come out after the bye. I believe you can check this. The UConn match, I believe, is on American Digital Network. UConn's been a very good program. They won the conference before a couple years back. UCF beat them last year.
I don't see that on American Digital Network right now, but it could. But that doesn't mean it won't be.
Okay, because I thought I saw a release where that match was listed. Now, they may have not mentioned that. I'm going to try and get that on the computer. But look, I got to be honest. I don't know I don't have a good feel for this team, Jeff. I don't. I really thought that Florida match, with the whole debacle playing on Sunday and then Monday, I thought that was a turning point. I thought that was like, wow, this team is going to go on a run. And then they just lost to George Mason. Now, maybe the fact that 2 days playing with Florida, all the emotion clearly maybe played a role in that, coming out flat. But I just don't know, Jeff. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you.
I feel like this team got snake bit. And I think what happened was I would love to go into one of those universes where the Florida Gulf Coast game didn't get called off to start the year. Because that would have been – I'm looking at – let's see. Where's FGCU right now? They're 47th in the RPI. They're actually undefeated right now. They're 8-0-2.
Yeah.
And you lose that match. All right, well, and I'm not saying well, obviously they didn't lose the match, but they didn't play the match. And obviously – and I said at the time, like, that's going to hurt their RPI because you don't get that match against a top 50 – definitely a top 50 RPI team in FGCU in FGCU. Then compound that with Florida having a bad year, which you thought that you would. Everyone in the world thought that Florida would have been good. And then some of these, like we said, kind of head scratcher loss. I mean, they lost the 2 games to open the season against Texas and North Carolina. If they had the game against Florida Gulf Coast and won, I think that they probably, who knows? They probably could have pulled off one of those games in Chapel Hill. And then they had the tie at Maryland, and then the loss to George Mason, like you said. And George Mason's actually off to a pretty good start. Even though they're 6-4, they've beaten some pretty solid teams. They've gotten themselves in the RPI top 50. But it just feels like this team has gotten snake bit, kind of like the way that the men's team got snake bit in the first part of last year, and now they kind of have to scramble down the stretch.
Well, and the other thing is we talked to Coach Sahedek. Remember, they have a lot of new faces. And what did we talk about in the preseason, Jeff, with Coach Calabrese and why he wants soccer to be a 2-semester sport? It's a sprint. Like, you got all these new faces, and you're trying to learn this team. Like, the women's soccer team, they might not know each other and get that chemistry down until, like, it's too late in the season. That's the problem. Soccer is such a sprint, and you're playing 2 matches a week, and you're trying to figure out who can do what. And before you know it, the season's done. By the way, I did confirm Sunday's match against UConn is on the American Digital Network.
Good.
Lincoln Rose, Kit McConico, and Bill Spalding is on the call for that. By the way, UConn, you talk about UConn has gone out. They're 2-9 currently. They've lost their last 4. So they're not what they were a couple years ago. So, but this is what makes me nervous, Jeff. Okay, UConn's a tricky place to play up there. You know, the grass's not all that great. If you don't get a win against UConn, that's going to kill your RPI. And that, you know, that's the tricky thing about these things. One of the things, by the way, and I want to get Murphy with men's basketball just around the corner. Men's basketball got rid of the RPI. And I do wonder at some point down the road if the other sports should follow suit and get rid of the RPI. Because if men's basketball doesn't believe the RPI is a worthy thing to use to put teams into the field, why are the other sports using it?
But they just replaced it with another formula. That's the thing. I mean, it's
that's what I'm saying.
Basically they just replaced it with another formula that's not called the RPI. That effectively does the same thing that it is.
But it takes more things into account than the RPI, which was at this time. Well, we know so much more now in this age where there's a bunch of numbers, a bunch of information available to us. The RPI did not take all of that into account, and so the new system does. It's a better system. I think the RPI was obviously flawed. It had lived past its meaning, its meaningfulness. So
I think you know who we should ask about that? Todd Dagenet, because he talks all the time about how the RPI basically governs volleyball. And and boy, I'd love to get his thoughts on that. If he was coming up with a formula, how he would do it.
And I want to get Coach Abe's thoughts about it. So we went through this last year. UCF women's basketball finished 3rd in the American Conference. They were clearly the 3rd best team, but their RPI wasn't quote-unquote good enough because the conference was down of things that UCF couldn't control. And so I just wonder if I'm not saying, it's a fascinating topic that I think for all sports has to address. The fact that men's basketball is addressing it, I'm curious if other sports addresses it because 87 is a hard RPI. Now, granted, it's early in the year, but my concern, Jeff, with women's soccer is where are the matches in the league where they can improve that RPI? That's going to be interesting. I mean, you have the RPI in front of you, so you can tell me who's got good RPIs in the league. I'm guessing South Florida probably.
Well,
who we got so far?
Well, I'm trying to pull it up here. Your top RPI in the AAC is Memphis right now at 10-1. They're 13th. USF is 26th. They are 5-1. Cincinnati's 35th at 6-4-1. SMU is 71st at 7-2-1, and then you have UCF at 87. So you have a few chances here.
Well, but here's what worries me: the 2 teams you didn't mention there at all, Temple and UConn. And you got to go on the road there to start conference. Now, I agree with you. The advantage is you're getting those 2 games out of the way early in good weather. The concern is you're opening conference play with them, which anything can happen when you open conference play. I just hope we don't have a conversation, Jeff, a month from now, 2 months from now, as we're getting closer, and you're like, man, if only they would have had a better result against Temple or UConn, or man, if this team was playing Temple or UConn now instead of back then, they would have crushed them. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the fact that, 1 month from now, right? Because we're recording this on Wednesday, September 26th. Exactly 1 month from now, you talked about soccer being a sprint. Exactly 1 month from now, Friday, October 26th, is the women's soccer regular season finale against USF in Tampa. So that tells you how much time that they have to really kind of regroup. They're going to play the entire conference schedule in 1 month. I mean, that's insane to me.
It is.
That is not a lot of wiggle room. And when you're, I realize it's the same for everybody else, but man, the more I see this, the more the coaches, especially Coach Calabrese on the men's side, he's right. They got to fix the schedule because this is terrible.
I just think it's a huge advantage if you have an experienced veteran team. I think, but if you have a lot of new faces, like Sahedeg has this year compared to last year, where she had a veteran team, I do think that's tough. It's tough for a team if you got a lot of new faces. It's probably the same going on at Florida. In fairness, they've got a lot of new faces there too. It's kind of wild. It's wild to me, but it is what it is. So you got to play it. I mean, it's nothing new. It's not like this is just happening. So they got to show up on the road, Jeff. They have to win, I think, these 2 matches to get off to a good start and hopefully put that George Mason behind them.
Yeah, they gotta rattle through these matches real quick. So, all right. Let's put a wrap up on this thing as we finish up here on the Black.
I feel like we've ripped every system in every sport tonight. It's
I know.
great.
They should just let us think about how we want to fix it. We'll just tear everything down and fix everything. All right. As we finish up, Murph, what you got on tap this week?
Let's see. I'm going to a football game on Saturday. You guys might know about that.
No kidding.
So I'll be. Yeah, how about that? So I will be doing my usual post-game quote transcription, trying to tell you guys what the players
say
and
it. Say it what it is. Say what it is. Come on.
It's potent quotables,
Thank you.
guys. It's potent quotables because I watch a lot of Jeopardy. So
and it's the place where coaches go to get bulletin board material, folks.
Yes.
That's Brian Murphy's thing.
Yeah. I will put out whatever the opposing coach, whatever SMU's coach needs, whatever Sonny Dykes needs will be in this column that he can put on his bulletin board for next week. But
we're going to add this to Sonny Dykes' Twitter account and tell him, hey, feel free to misquote Brian all you want from here.
So anyway, I'll do that. I do believe I'm going to head out to baseball on Sunday, which is right at 1 o'clock. Which is right at the hour of NFL kickoff. So I'll sort of be juggling my other life of fantasy football and my UCF fandom at the same time. And then
I could still ask you my 10 fantasy questions on Sunday morning. Then
you can absolutely ask me. In fact, if anybody else wants to ask me, you can just ask me at Spokes_Murphy on Twitter because that's all I do Sunday morning.
Can I just send you my team and you just tell me if it sucks?
I love to do it, Jeffrey. Okay. I rip it apart. I've been doing fantasy since I was in high school. It's still a love. And then Tuesday, right after UCF media availability on Tuesday, we have basketball media day, men's and women's basketball media day. Women go first, then the men after that. So I'll be out there doing that.
Fun.
Right. Wait a minute, media day.
Yes.
First practice, you mean?
Well, it's first practice. Sorry, yeah. But we get.
Yeah, you scared me there.
Sorry, yeah. I don't want to scare you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Yes. No, we did. It's first practice. Now, technically, it's not the first practice for the men. The first practice for the men is actually this Saturday, but for good reason, they're not going to have the media talk to them on that day because they're doing something else just down the road. So it'll be Tuesday. It'll be the first contact that the media in general will get to see UCF basketball and then talk to men's and women's coaches and players and whatever else.
First contact, like they're coming off of a flying saucer or something.
That's right.
I miss Midnight Madness.
Oh, I do too.
I really miss Midnight Madness. Well, one time we did it when it was 03, I think. It was 03 or 04. But we did it when we were students, and we actually covered the games live. There were 2 inter-squad games, and it was a blast. It was a real blast. I know they don't do it traditionally like they used to do it because they changed the timing and all that, but I just miss that tradition. That's one thing I wish they would bring back, Midnight Madness. That used to be fun.
One of my coolest UCF memories was back in the old arena, which is just the venue now, but when they used to play basketball in there and they had Midnight Madness, I watched them for so long. It must have been like 04, 05 before I started with the UCF Central Florida Future. I was just watching them through that entire practice, and I was literally the last person in that arena watching them practice. So they just said, come on down to the floor and we'll just shake your hand and thanks for staying 2 hours to watch this. I was the only one left. It was really cool. It was really neat.
Yeah, that was cool. I wish they would bring that back. Anyway, Eric, what do you have coming up?
Well, let's first talk about what I already have. You mentioned I have the article UCF-FAU, over a million viewers on the. So I broke down. In fact, it was the third most highest rated cable program that night for the demographics of people age 18 to 49, which is a very desirable.
That's the key demo. Yep.
So that was very significant. So I break that down in the article. Plus, I also wrote Trey Nixon had a radio interview with the Mark Moses show. My good friend Mark Moses, who hosts a radio show up in Vieira, up there, and of course that's where Trey Nixon played high school football. So it was kind of cool. And one of the things I've liked, guys, from what UCF's done recently, is they've made players accessible for radio interviews and things like that. And that was a very good interview with Trey Nixon, and so you could listen to that. I put a link up to that story. And, of course, after a week off due to attending some family things, ELO Lines back. I break down the game that everybody's really going to look at, Old Dominion, East Carolina.
That's all of a sudden got a ton of storyline around it.
Yeah.
I mean, that ain't kidding. Plus, the NFL game of the week involving UCF players, Texans and the Colts. Big AFC South, Jordan Akins with the Texans, and then a guy who's quietly having a Pro Bowl year. Former UCF safety Clayton Geathers of the Colts.
Clayton Geathers has really gotten better. I mean, in his NFL, he's really worked hard at getting better, and it's good to see him having such success with Indianapolis. We got a lot of stuff on the site going on right now. Chris Carter has his full breakdown of the UCF-FAU game that you definitely want to check out. Obviously, you got, Elo, we mentioned the two things that you have up there right now. I have a piece up there about, yes, in fact, UCF really did draw 44,257 fans to the FAU game.
Who's questioning that?
A number of USF fans on Twitter basically said that this was fake news, that the stadium was empty. And one of them, interestingly enough, was Matt Baker of the Tampa Bay Times, who posted a photo of a relatively empty Spectrum Stadium at 6:55 p.m. as people were filtering in, late arriving crowd. Because remember, it was a Friday night; everyone was getting in from rush hour. And he tweeted out this photo saying, "Some seats still available 6 minutes before kickoff of what might be the funnest game in the state this year." And he never once corrected the record on this.
Well, and Lane Kiffin didn't correct Murphy. I mean, why? Nobody corrects anybody.
Right, but it's not Lane Kiffin's job to correct Lane Kiffin's record. It is Matt Baker's job to correct Matt Baker's record. And it was a packed house. And let's give credit where credit's due. The students showed up in force. Murph, you were there. I have a breakdown of this. I just don't understand, man. Tribalism is a hell of a drug. That's one of the things that I said in the column. That USF fans are like, you guys didn't have any fans in that game. Like, one guy was actually trying to argue with me on Twitter saying, like, are you serious? We can watch the game on TV. There's no one at the game. I'm like, what are you watching? You're not watching the game on TV if you think no one's at the game. It was a full house.
Right. They watched the opening kick, right? I mean, maybe it wasn't looking on. I didn't, opening kick. I don't recall that.
Just don't get it.
I understand. I understand where South Florida fans are coming from. When you tell them about fans, when they think of fans, they're thinking about fans that look like empty seats, like seats. They don't look at human beings. They look at, there's 20,000 empty seats. That's a big crowd. That's a big crowd for them. So that's why they looked at that. They're not used to having human beings sitting down in seats. That's probably why they were confused.
We've got a new feature that we're also debuting this week. Jeremy Brenner is bringing about what we call the round table, where a few of us on the Black Gold Banneret staff are going to answer basically 5 key questions in the week, and we're bringing that out midweek, so we're going to have that up here for you as well by tomorrow. And then also, don't forget Luke Harris's excellent column on fans' reaction to FAU, and also Derek Warden's outstanding photo gallery from the FAU game, which was just remarkable. Over 100 photos. Some of them are just...
There's evidence right there that there were a lot of
people. I know, man. Amazing. If you get the chance
Photoshopped fans, they weren't there.
They're going to tell them the photos were doctored, or they were from another game, or hashtag fake news.
From the failing Black and Gold Banneret.
Failing Black and Gold Banneret. You're fake news. Whatever. So there's a lot of stuff for you to check out this week. There's going to be a lot more stuff for you to check out in the coming weekend ahead, including our live game thread as well. Follow us all on Twitter at UCF_Banneret collectively. Follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Follow Brian at Spokes_Murphy. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon. And follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Fellas, thanks so much. Enjoy the week, and I'll see you boys, see you at some point during the week. I'm sure we'll all run into each other.
I only get to hear your disembodied voice, Jeffrey.
Disembodied voice. Gosh. And we'll, which seems like a good point, which seems like a good spot to wrap it up. For Brian Murphy and Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you again next week. Don't forget our live game thread for UCF versus Pitt, starting an hour before kickoff. We'll see you then.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.